It's another edition of Behind the Mic with AudioFile magazine. Leslie Fine is with me, and we are talking about books that can take you somewhere or that you can take while you're going somewhere on a weekend jaunt.
Oh my gosh, that's perfect. That's the perfect way to describe this. That's so much more concise than how I've been trying to explain it. Thank you.
You're welcome. So, what are we talking about today?
Today we have a young adult title. It's called Where the Heart Should Be, and it's by Sarah Crossan and read beautifully by Sophie Jo Wasson.
And of course, Sarah Crossan is an Irish writer, but an award winning YA author,
Yes,
author of many books.
absolutely. And this audiobook was an earphones winner.
Oh, that's really nice because I looked up Sophie Jo Wasson, and she's done like very, very few books. So hooray that she got an earphones for this.
Yes, oh my goodness, it's so beautifully done. I don't think this will be her her
Mm.
last audiobook if she wants more performing under her belt. I mean, it's phenomenal
S
how she performs this.
so give us a little bit of a thumbnail sketch.
So this is a very serious topic that this audiobook takes listeners to Ireland during the devastating potato famine the year it takes place in 1846.
Mm.
So, we're going to a beautiful place that's going through a terrible, terrible time. And what was interesting to me is we have this story. We have a teenager, her name is Nell. She goes to work as a kitchen maid to help support her family, and her job gets more and more important as the times get more and more desperate. And she develops a friendship with the landlord's nephew. And so that friendship, as it builds, as it kind of blossoms, we sort of have, these happy, joyful moments paralleling these really devastating, times that she and her family are going through, and her whole town, really.
The whole country, it was horrible.
Yes, yes, it's that there's so much there that I never really thought of when I was thinking about this time in history. So, as really good novels do, they teach you something about when and where you are, and this is one of those novels that does that.
And what a time to set a story, that's I'm assuming a romance blossoms, or am I making the wrong assumption here?
No, no, you're absolutely right. A
Yeah.
romance does blossom between the 2.
And the stakes are so high when you set it in this period.
Absolutely, and as the landlord's nephew, the landlord is not the kindest fellow, and here he is collecting rents from people who don't have food.
Is he Irish or English?
He's kind of heartless in his way. He's an English landlord,
Okay.
and, he's brought his nephew there to take over, ultimately to inherit everything, and so the nephew has a conscience, whereas the landlord's pretty brutal. So we have all of these, twists and turns and conflicts throughout the audiobook, and it really is something that once you start listening, you have to think like, how can this possibly work out? Like, what is going to happen? And so it ends up being a really great, riveting listen for that reason.
And Crossan is really good because she really develops a sense of place in her work, but also of character.
Oh, definitely. This novel is written in verse. And
Oh,
so, yeah, it's interesting and it's so well performed. Sometimes that can be a little tricky, where naturally you kind of want to pause at the end of a line or whatever, but that's not the case here. Instead, the whole idea of having that written in verse form, I feel like that it strikes this balance where we're moving from one big moment to the next big moment. And, there's nothing unnecessary here. It's very I don't wanna call it spare in that it's, lacking anything because it's not. As you say, it creates a great sense of place, but it really moves that action forward, and it really spotlights, I guess, the way a good poem would. It spotlights the most striking image and the most, affecting emotion. So it works out really well. And then put that in, Wasson's voice, and it's phenomenal.
Well, let's listen. Set this up for us.
This is Nell. We're gonna hear Nell's first day at her new job in the kitchens at the landlord's house, and you'll definitely get a sense of place and personality, and I just love the dialogue in this whole audiobook, but this will give you a great sampling of that.
All right. This is Where the Heart Should Be by Sarah Crossan, read by Sophie Jo Wasson.
Maggie Kennedy opens the door, takes one look at my mucky skirt and boots, and smacks me flat across the face. How dare you come up to my door like a dirty pig? I step back, brush myself off. The dogs behind her bark and growl, teeth bared. But it's raining, and standing outside only makes me more bedraggled. I was clean when I set off, Maggie. I'm sorry. She lifts her hand to hit me again, but wipes her thick fingers on her apron instead. My name is Mrs. Kennedy, you cheeky brat. And I couldn't give a heifer's tit what you look like this morning. You're not to come up to this house like that again. Do you hear me? It's my neck on the line. If Lord Wicken sees you in a state... I nod. A trickle of summer rainwater runs down my back. Get in here. She grabs my arm and drags me into the kitchen, which is larger than our whole cottage. I've never been inside the big house before.
Okay, yikes, first of all. Hello, how are you, snack? Good God. You're right. I mean, it is a lovely narration and beautiful, beautiful accent and
Oh,
really great
yes.
characterization. But I it and it's if you hadn't told me this was in verse, I wouldn't have known from this excerpt.
Right? I agree. I kept going back and saying, I feel like, that we have every section is titled and it almost sounds like, when you hear the title, like, oh, this sounds like a poem. And so when I went back and looked more at it, I realized, oh, yes, it is. It's written in verse. Like, that's fantastic. But I think it really suits it so well.
Well, that is Where the Heart Should Be by Sarah Crossan, read by Sophie Jo Wasson. And this is a YA title, but it sounds like adults would also really like it a great deal.
Oh, I definitely think so.
That's Where the Heart Should Be by Sarah Crossan, read by Sophie Jo Wasson. Leslie, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Support for Behind the Mic comes from Dreamscape, the publisher of The Tenant, by #1 New York Times bestselling author Frida McFadden, narrated by Will Dameron and Christine Lakin. Discover your next great listen at dreamscapepublishing.com. And we have a bonus edition of Behind the Mic on Friday. We're going to be continuing with our earphones award winners, with our earphones roundup with AudioFile's Laura Rossi. She's going to talk about 3 earphones winners on Friday. So make sure you're following us and it'll just show up in your feed. I'm Jo Reed. I'll talk to you tomorrow.